With hard work comes great work. What I like to say in Spanish is querer es poder.
Words of wisdom.
Yes,
like
sir.
Edwin. Words of wisdom.
If I can give any words of advice to somebody that's interested in construction, is go out there and get it, man. Do it. If you don't start it, you're not going to find out.
Well, Edwin, I appreciate you coming on today, to the podcast. And we just want to get to know a little bit how your Moss history got started here, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. I initially started at Moss, I want to say September of 2018. I got offered a position to be a lube truck assistant. My father at the current time was a lube truck driver. I was concurrently going to college, trying to finish that up, and was looking for a part-time job, really. He voiced it here to his boss. They talked to Garrett. Within 2 days, they had me here interviewing, offered me a position as a lube truck assistant. They're very flexible with scheduling, stuff like that. So, I signed up as quick as possible. Doing oil changes, hydraulic fluid changes, anything, to do with the machinery, fueling, greasing. That was our job mainly.
So when they first introduced you to the position, did you know anything about Moss, though?
I didn't even know anything about Moss, anything about wet utilities, anything about excavations, nothing.
So you kind of went in blind, per se, right?
I was greener than that plant, nothing. So I really got to, while doing that, I got to, realize the bigger picture of plumbing. It's basically plumbing, but just on a bigger scale. Trenches, safety procedures, embedment requirements, grades, why everything matters on the plan, because I was fortunate enough to talk to foremen or anybody on the project and just be curious and ask, what's going on? Everybody was always helpful. And, this is that. Little pieces of information like that, stuck to my brain and helped me on.
So when was it that you transitioned to, because you started off as an assistant, right, to an actual driver? Or I
didn't get a chance to be a driver. I didn't have a CDL, but it was December of 2019 when I was getting ready to graduate. Garrett Moss is very involved in every aspect of the business, not just running the show, but every aspect, every department he's involved. I can speak that for a fact because even as a lube truck assistant, he was always very vocal with me and my dad. Always kept track of me. Hey, what's going on? You ready to finish school or how's it going? I would hate to see you with a degree, still being a lube truck assistant. I was like, oh no, keep him up to date. When I was getting closer, he was like, hey, you want to come in for an interview? Maybe I have a spot for you. And I was like, well, sure. I really don't have anything planned right now. So, worth a shot. Some people call it fate. I call it destiny, It was destined for me to come interview. The first started out as they offered me an estimating coordinator role. That was really delegating emails, stuff like that, getting stuff on our schedule, running early takeoffs, learning what a takeoff was, actually reading plans, finding out how everything's connected. Every page matters, stuff like that. It all started from the field, getting to know what was going on there. Now going into plan and a computer, trying to connect that.
So you're kind of putting two and two together from the experience that you had out in the field being, an assistant lube truck driver, right? So, that transitioned into you getting a opportunity to come on board and work in the estimating department, right, on the pre-con side of things.
Yes, sir.
So, do you remember what one of your first projects was, or
Man, it's been a while. I want to say the first project like that I actually got awarded. The first project I ran a takeoff on. First project I ran a takeoff on was like I want to say like a little coffee shop, just so I can get familiar. It was familiar with like items that we pick up and stuff like that. Project that I got awarded, I want to say it was called Avery Retaining. That was the first project that I got officially awarded on my own.
Yeah, that's really cool. Those are the type of things that kind of stick to us, right? Our first award, our first step into getting a project and all that, right? But at that time, did you know like how estimating really impacted the field, or like how important it really is for these bids to come out?
So I want to say it took me maybe close to within a year, because my main focus was just coordinating, setting up our schedule and stuff like that. Once I started digging into more doing takeoffs and messing around with our estimating software, that's when I started coming to the realization of what being in the estimating department really impacts and what impact that has for the overall company. Because in theory, if we don't get any jobs, if we're not doing our proper job, running a show, doing sales, having conversations, building communication, building relationships, we're not going to be able to continue running the rest of the stuff. So it's kind of like a domino effect is what I call. If we hit one, you're just going to hit the next and keep going.
Yeah, I agree. Domino effect is a really good way to put it, because a lot of people don't realize how important, how critical it is for the estimating team to really push out these bids, right? I'm not very familiar when it comes to like estimating, right? I understand very little of it. So how does a bid become a project, an awarded project? What's that process look like?
I'm lucky enough to gone through every stage of our department here. So it starts with the estimating coordinator. They get flooded with bid invites from general contractors with their due dates. We try to do our best job to organize that in our CRM. It's like our bid management. We have weekly meetings, sometimes every Monday, to try to coordinate and dictate what projects should we bid, what client that treat us great.
So it's relationships right there, right? Really, that's a really big thing. I know that Garrett really talks on that a lot, is relationships.
Yes, sir. We're trying to maintain our relationships. We're trying to build new relationships. So it's a matter of what projects are out there and what projects are suitable for us, and always trying to break the ice with new clients. So it's delegating that. After it gets assigned to an estimator, each estimator usually has an estimator assistant, helps us run our takeoffs. When it's real busy, sometimes we have to step in there and do our own takeoff as well. So you run the takeoff. We have, not just with our general contractors, but we have to have mutual relationships and communication too with our vendor suppliers, being pipe, aggregate embedment, any specialty items like bores, traffic control, pumping, anything that you can think of and you can name. We have to have those relationships built, because we can't provide a quote without having that backing.
Yeah, so it goes from the relationships, let's say the contractors or the owners that want to be on their projects, to the relationships that we have with our subcontractors as well, right? Yes, you mentioned like bores, right? There are subcontractors, right? Our hydrovacing contractors, there's our the TV contractors and all that good stuff, right? So those relationships also come in play to whenever you're doing your bids as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah, because we have to, at the end of the day, it's an estimate. So we just have to try to be as accurate as possible to give, operations teams the best coverage, is what I like to call it, as possible. Then we have to build off of that and try to do better in a way. Once we have that situated, that's when we start what I like to say, organizing, formatting to input into our estimating software. So we use this estimating software called Heavy Bid, HCSS cloud system, and that's where we do our manipulations of time, material. A lot of variables take into effect. When building, we have to think about depths, profiles, grading, existing conditions, watery, rocky. So we use multiple handful of details that we can find. I like to consider estimating kind of like an open book test. So you have all the information that you need. You just have to know where to look for it. Being geotech, borings to know if it's rocky, if there's a lot of water, stuff like that can help you visualize and map out the project. So in theory, we're just not picking up items and throwing them on. Like how I like to think about it is we're building the project in our heads and using these tools to finalize it on a paper.
Yeah, from what it sounds like, there's a lot of variables, a bunch of variables that come into play from the very beginning, right? Because you've mentioned several things now. You've mentioned, the subcontractors, and then us as a contractor, and then other variables like, the depths, the geotechs, and all that good stuff, which I'm assuming goes back to scheduling as well, right? Mm-hmm. Which is something that you guys have to work on, of like, hey, they want us to meet a certain schedule, so if it is a certain depth, it's going to push us more because we have to do more digging. If there's water, if it's rocky, it's more more work that we have to do on our end, so you have to make sure that there's money in there for that, right?
Yeah. Each project has its own level of complexity. Mm-hmm. Being big, small, medium, we dedicate and cater time to each of them equally. Sometimes the smaller projects are more, I want to say, complex than the larger ones, because larger ones, there's more work to be done, and we could just plan and organize that better. Sometimes the smaller ones take a little bit more time, especially if it's downtown city work, Yeah,
because it's a congested area, right? So it's a lot more complex when it comes to, installing, a water line or sewer line. There's different areas or obstacles that you have to go around to be able to really.
And on top of like what I mentioned, depths, existing conditions, there's also, we live in the DF-Dub. We're blessed to be in the DF-Dub, but every municipality sometimes have its own city standard details, city standard ways of doing things, being public or private work. So we have to throw that on top too.
So Fort Worth may have different details than Dallas does, right?
Yeah.
So they expect things a certain way than Dallas does, right?
You're not going to bid a job in Plano like you do one in downtown Dallas.
Yeah.
It's going to get you out of the race.
Yeah. Well, that's very important to keep in consideration. We do work in DFW, right? So we can go, I think we've gone as far north as, I think, Sherman and Denison. And then as far south as, I think, Lorena, right? And then, all the DFW and outskirts, right? We've gone up to Prosper. We've gone up to Fort Worth. I think Weatherford, at some point, we went up there. We went to Red Oak, Cleburne. I mean, we're all over the place. So that's a lot of variables that come into play when it comes to your bid, right? I mean, that's pretty impressive when it comes to really narrowing down a number at the end of the day, right? Because there's one sum at the end of the day, right?
It's a matter of time management and communication and trying to stay on top of it all while also multitasking with things you get hit on the daily. You can prep and you can plan as much as you can ahead of the game, but the more you plan, the more that you're gonna just get hit with stuff. And, it keeps me busy. I like it, man. It's been a journey. Every aspect that I've been involved in with this company has allowed me to visualize and see how everything it flows, kind of like bringing it back to like the Lube Trick days. The way Moss is, it's a very lubricated running machine. So every little aspect, every department matters in its own way. Going back to that, if we don't have our machines properly lubed, properly fueled, we can't install pipe. If we don't have our laborers, pipemen, foremen, superintendents, project managements, if one slips up, it messes up something for everybody. So everything has to be in union, working together. I take that and try to instill that now in the estimating department with our personnel that we have that are starting off like I was once, and try to keep the communication even with ourselves here in the office, and then, try to see if they need any pointers, any help. I like to consider us all as one. It's not, I think it's about 8 or 9 of us now, still keeping that it's just one unit,
Yeah, I think the domino effect is a good comparison that you used overall for Moss, right? So we all have our portion of the company to provide to keep everything flowing, right? But then each department as well has their domino effects, right? Just like you were saying, y'all are a team. We're essentially all a team, right? But then y'all have y'all's portion that affects everything down the road, right?
Yeah.
It's very important to keep that in mind, and that you see it, right? Because not everybody sees the domino effect. They just think that their job is...
Yeah, they're just here at a 9 to 5.
Yeah, it's just...
clock in, clock out.
Only their job matters, and that's not the case here, right? And I think everybody sees that here at Moss, is that everybody's position and job matters here.
I think that's one of the parts due to Garrett just making this place a great environment to work at. I don't think I've ever viewed it that way, like, clock in, clock out. I'm happy to be here, I like coming to work every day. I like putting in the time. I like putting in the effort, not just the rewards for me, but for the whole company. There's several hundred families that we're providing for. Yeah, that could be a lot of stress on somebody's shoulders, but I find pride in it, being able to do my part and help out the rest of the people that work here for us. Nobody's bigger or smaller than anybody else. We're all the same. We're all trying to provide for our family, and that's one of the things that really speak out to me and drives me to continue coming here and doing the best that I can.
Yeah, I think that speaks volume, man. That speaks volume, because you're not just, looking at how Moss impacts you, but how it impacts everyone up to the people out in the field, right? Back to that lube truck driver that you once were, right? I really appreciate you coming on board today. I think you are vital to the team and to Moss, and everyone always looks forward to talking to you, man. I don't think there's a person that's ever said, there's Edwin. It's always, you hear Edwin's laugh, man, it's something fun's going on, right?
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we appreciate you coming on board today and giving us your story here at Moss.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here. I get commented about my laughs most of the time, but it's just one of our core values. We never take ourselves too seriously, so it's we're serious at work, but sometimes it's good to just step away from the screen and have a good laugh because it makes you feel human. You're not stuck we're not robots, we're not computers. So it's good to have a good laugh. And I like being a part of the company. I like being a part of our process about the bigger picture. Throughout the years, I've been able to be involved in great projects around here, it being Compass, Project Maverick. We're blessed to be partnered with Polk Construction, so we've been a part of a plentiful of schools around the Metroplex, and it's just great to see our industry continuing to grow, and hopefully we keep being blessed and the market stays like this, because I can't see myself anywhere else.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man, to be able to see school here, school there, and Moss was a part of it. I've been with my daughter, and I'll drive down the road, and you're like, oh, we were on that project. We were on that project, and when I say we, I say Moss, right? Because I'm not the one that pushed out the bid. I'm not the one that was the project manager. But we all as a whole had a part into completing that project, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, my family gets bored of me doing that all the time. Like, hey, I estimated that, or we did this project.
I put money in there for
you. It's like, oh, that's the 10th time you told me that. If I can give any words of advice to somebody that's interested in construction, is go out there and get it, man. Do it. If you don't try it, you're not going to know that feeling of what could have been.
What ifs?
Yeah, so mostly people are routing just college. I did the college route myself, and I was just landed here. But there's other trades that we can count on. Construction is always going to be here. Hopefully, if you don't start it, you're not going to find out. Opportunities everywhere. You just have to put yourself in a place where you want to be.
Words of wisdom.
Yes, sir.
Edwin. Words of wisdom. I think there's a lot of people that could appreciate those words, because sometimes you just need that drive.
I know it's just our company core values, but I take that those meanings, those definitions, and also apply it to my personal life. With hard work comes great work. So in order to get the outcome that you want, I believe that you have to put in the work. You have to put in the extra time, do whatever you have to do to master your craft. If you don't practice and practice your craft, how are you going to get better?
Yeah.
What are you doing to get yourself there? The planning that you're going through. Oh, well, I don't really have a plan. I was like, well, there goes your step one. Make a plan, set your goals. You can start with daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, and proceed and go on. And I guarantee you're going to get where you want to be. What I like to say in Spanish is querer es poder. So, if you want it bad enough, you're going to get it.
I think one of the best things that our core values correlates with, we know it's a win-win when we all win, right?
Yes, sir.
And so the reason I say that one is because y'all win y'all's projects, right? Y'all get them awarded. From there, everything's just a chain effect, right? The PM started getting involved, the general superintendents, foremen, up to the field workers. And then at the end of the day, they go home winning because they're able to go home to their family, right? So we all win, right? And that's the biggest thing there.
It's always good to know that what you're doing is rewarding, not just to yourself, but, to everybody else. Just thankful to be here, man.
Thankful to be here. Well, like I said, we appreciate you coming on board today. We appreciate you coming and having some words of wisdom from Edwin.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate the time, and let's just keep on rolling.
Keep on rolling.